Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Doing great. How about you?
Good. I'm really excited about today's episode. We've got a good little group today. I was just saying before we started recording, and I'm interested to see what everybody thinks about this album. We're talking about a dark horse album today, but we're talking about a really big band, Iron Maiden. Today's album is Somewhere in Time. Dark horse albums, what we usually do is we kind of pick an album that's not usually considered the best. So it might be somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it's closer to the bottom, and we kind of discuss the merits of the album. In some of the research I've done, this album is actually pretty well regarded from critics, as well as like rankings lists and things like this. I'm going to go over that very quickly. If you like our content, like and subscribe. That helps us grow. We put out a lot of free content for folks. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon or donate, that helps us support the channel as well. So we appreciate anything like that. That's amazing. Today we have our awesome patrons on today. If you want to join any of these chats, you can join us over at Patreon. But we are talking about Somewhere in Time today. So I'm just going to go over just a quick brief little research that I've done. So like I said, this is Iron Maiden's 6th studio album. It was released in 1986. The 2 singles that came off this album were Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land. The album went platinum in the States. It's actually sold pretty well around the world. Kerrang did a ranking of the Iron Maiden albums and put Somewhere in Time at number 4. And they said after their huge success in the first half of the decade, Maiden found themselves burned out and creatively at odds. Bruce wanted their next album to be an acoustic, unplugged kind of affair years before MTV started doing it. The rest of the band disagreed, and rightly so. Somewhere in Time was more experimental with guitar synthesizers and a more layered approach to the songwriting, but without being unrecognizable. The accompanying tour was also notable for its use of inflatables, once described by Kerrang as likely a bouncy castle version of Blade Runner, which would occasionally deflate at key moments. Louder Sound album at number 3, so they put it pretty high. The most underrated of Maiden's 80s albums by a mile, Somewhere in Time came between 2 major milestones and, as a result, seldom gets the props it deserves. In fact, it's stunning and still sounds fresh and vital 30 years later. Caught Somewhere in Time is one of Maiden's greatest album openers, Wasted Years, one of the finest singles, and closing epic Alexander the Great is a strong contender for the song most Maiden diehards would cheerfully stab a relative to see perform live. And then there's Heaven Can Wait, and A Stranger in a Strange Land, and Sea of Madness. This is a really good album, yes. Overall, I mean, AllMusic gave it 3.5 stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal gave it 7 out of 10. Kerrang, 5 out of 5. Sputnik Music gave it 4.5 out of 5. The Daily Vault gave it an A. So it's a pretty well-regarded album. Maybe not recognized as the best or number 1, but it's pretty up there. So I'm interested to see what you folks have to say. I'm going to throw it over to a new face in the Contrarians. So let's welcome Bill to the show and tell us what you think about Iron Maiden Somewhere in Time. Are you yes or no on it? And what do you rank it out of 10 more importantly?
Right,
and if you have and if you have anything where we can find you, let us know that as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to be here, everybody. I've been watching for a while, and it's cool to see some of you right here. So I'll just get it out of the way right now. This is my favorite Iron Maiden album. It has been since 1986. I was 18 when it came out. So we definitely get a bit of the your first introduction to the band effect here. I think every song on this album is a classic. I don't think there's a weak skippable moment here. At the time when it was released, I don't recall any sort of controversy about the guitar synthesizers being used, but as the years passed on, I read a lot of people complaining about that. Yeah, I still don't see it. I have no problem with it. I think it adds just the right extra ambiance to the album, really cool effects. They blend in seamlessly. And despite the lack of Bruce, the songs are great. He sings them as though he had a hand in the writing, whether he did or not. So it seems like his conviction was still there. At the time, I owned it on cassette, and there were no writing credits, so I had no idea what was going on. I was only reading, say, Rolling Stone at the time, and as you can imagine, there wasn't much metal coverage in Rolling Stone. So I had no idea any of the background drama. I just enjoyed the album. And I seem to be a contrarian in what my favorite side is. Is it everything I've read since then? It seems to be that side one is the strongest side. You know, Wasted Years was the big single that's kept on. Heaven Can Wait with the oh chants with the crowd. But side two was always my go-to. I was actually a runner at the time quite a bit, and I had a giant jam box, which was I would carry on my shoulder. I was a smoker at the time also. So imagine an 18-year-old with a giant jam box playing The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner with the jam box in one hand, a cigarette in the other, running through the streets of Denver, Colorado in the middle of the night. That was how I jogged back then. A little bit odd, but hey, what are you going to do? You know, it was the 80s. It was so I don't do that anymore. I don't think I could, even if, I tried. But yeah, it was pretty intense with that slow beginning and then leading into where Nico and the band just take off when that song just hits it hard and fast. By the time I got through running to that, I really needed to slow down. A Stranger in a Strange Land. And I have to say, though, I got this vinyl copy. It was the first time I've ever found this on vinyl 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was pretty hyped. And I've listened to it a few times over the last week. And one thing I found is that I have actually warmed up a lot more to side one now. And I've almost been enjoying side one more than side two. So maybe that's just a matter of the fact that I'm overly familiar with side two, or maybe I'm actually coming around to the more popular view. It's hard to say, but I think in the Maiden catalog, I would give this a 10 out of 10. In the overall music catalog, I'll give it about an 8.5, leaning towards a 9. I at no point during the last week where I've been relentlessly listening to this have I thought, I need to stop this now. I'm tired of this, or move on to the next song. So yeah, still my number one Maiden album. And oddly, I'm not a huge progressive metal fan overall, but I love what is probably considered to be their biggest influence on the progressive metal scene. And Rush is my favorite band, and they're clearly an influence. So I can't quite figure that out, why I'm not a bigger overall progressive metal fan. Maybe I only need it in small doses, or maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but I'm pretty content with the old school folks for as far as that genre goes in general. I think that's about all I have for the moment. I'm kind of curious to see what everybody else has to say. I know this album is often a love it or hate it affair, so kind of curious to see if we have any on the negative side here today. It was interesting to hear different views.
Awesome, Bill. Great job. You're on top of it. 18 years old. Can't get more nostalgic than that, right? Getting an album when you're 18. Is there anywhere we can find you?
Not really. I've followed a few folks on Twitter, but I don't have any particular channels or anything like that.
Nice. Well, hopefully we'll see you around again. Another fresh face to the Contrarians, Simos. Take it away. What do you think of Somewhere in Time, and are you yes or no, and what do you rank it out of 10?
Okay, so thanks a lot for having me. It's always a pleasure discussing, with you. So, and I really like your videos. I've been watching the last 2 years. So, I'm really happy to be here. Let's go, to Somewhere in Time. I recently did a ranking of our Maiden albums, and, Somewhere in Time sits somewhere, on the third place. Only, below Seventh Son, which is probably my favorite album, my favorite heavy metal album, of all times, and Parsley, that, I consider to be, a masterpiece as well. And yes, Somewhere in Time was my third place, and fourth can change. Sometimes I prefer Number of the Beast or Somewhere in Time, but I really love the album. Long story short. When I was young, when I started listening to Iron Maiden, 25, 26 years back, I remember we didn't have, this internet hype, reading many comments, videos, and so on and so forth. So the only thing that we had, as a source of discussing music, it was just conversations with pals, as well, as the heavy metal magazines. And I remember, that it was quite highly placed, in the Iron Maiden catalog at the time. So I was quite surprised to see recently, when I started following again, the communities of younger Iron Maiden fans, for example, in Reddit. I was quite surprised to see that, it's quite disregarded. I mean, I saw that there are many people, saying that, okay, it's one of their least favorites, or, it's their least favorite from the 80s. For example, A Matter of Life and Death, scores way higher than some of the time. To be honest, I was quite, surprised by that. And I think that it's disregarded because, I mean, Bruce has no credits on that, and somehow, they don't play that often, songs, on the legacy of the Beast tour. So finally, I listened to it, and these days before the episode, and I mean, it's still extremely, it's a very fresh album, it's very fresh, it's very energetic. I mean, I was really surprised, it never gets old, this album. So song by song, I don't know, Caught Somewhere in Time, I consider it to be my probably favorite first, opener of Iron Maiden albums. Sometimes, I prefer Aces High, but when I get, a bit fed up with Aces High, because you can listen to it, everywhere. Sometimes I prefer Caught Somewhere in Time. I really love, this song. I love, the guitar on that. From the first 3 seconds, you can understand that, it's an Iron Maiden album, an Iron Maiden song. They already had their signature, and the synths don't bother me at all. And then you go to Wasted Years, that's, such a nostalgic and at the same time optimistic song. I mean, with a perfect, I really like the video clip as well. Yeah, I think that the video clip, really suits the music. So for me, it's an amazing single, Wasted Years. And I'm quite happy that this is the only song from the album that they still play every now and then when they tour. Sea of Madness, it's probably my least favorite. I like it. It's a very energetic song. I'm not a huge fan of Sea of Madness, but still, it's an important song. It's a strong song. Heaven Can Wait. I really regret, that I was born in the wrong era and I never saw that, live, because I think that this is really an arena song, with this. It's I mean, it's a song that should be heard, should be listened live. And then you go to, to the more epic side with The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. An amazing song, amazing melody, the guitar, Bruce vocals. I think I always believe that Somewhere in Time and Power Slaves was the top of Bruce's performance. He was still young but mature enough, to perform like that. He was amazing. And then you have Stranger in a Strange Land, another amazing song. I always get the chills in this part, when he sings What Became on the Man. It's such an amazing song. The melodies, it's a masterpiece. Deja Vu, another great song, very strong guitars. Martin, Smith, they were, at their strongest. A very nice one. And you have Alexander the Great that I always loved. I consider this to be one of my favorite, Iron Maiden songs, one of my favorite epics. I love everything on the song. And again, I was surprised to see that there are mainly younger fans that say, okay, it's not a good song because it's like reading a history book. Okay, yeah, I understand that the lyrics can be, very precise and to the point, but it's still a very strong song. So for me, to summarize, it's definitely a yes. This is a very strong album, and I give it a solid 9 out of 10.
Nice. Wow, some big scores. And some people like reading history books, so...
Exactly.
For me, I'm all about that. Yeah. Anywhere we can find you, Simos?
But here, Contrarians.
Awesome, thank you. Andee, why don't you take it away? Tell us if you're yes or no on Somewhere in Time, where we can find you, and what you rated out of 10.
Okay, I'm yes, but with a side dish of no. Yeah, basically, this is the album for me where it's the last Iron Maiden album that has the magic of this lineup still kind of coursing through the band. And I think it's got some of their best songs, but it's also the album where you start seeing cracks in the formulas. The Steve Harris formula in particular, you start getting tired of this trope of like the galloping bass in E minor, the obligatory harmony guitars, and Bruce Dickinson is always singing in the same little box. So that said, I think that some of the Steve Harris stuff on this album that really works is the title track. It's a great opening song. It's very anthemic. I think Long Distance Runner is pretty good. It's enjoyable. I think it's got a great opening. And then I find when the band kicks in at a much faster tempo, very suddenly, I find that a little bit jarring and kind of clumsy. Heaven Can Wait, I always thought was a little corny. The whoa, whoa, whoa stuff, the soccer chant business is pretty low-hanging fruit. I think Iron Maiden's better than that. And I always thought the chorus was a little bit annoying, a little bit grating to me. But overall, I don't hate it. I think it's okay. It's fine. Deja Vu is a throwaway to me. I mean, the chorus is just, it's like very little time was spent on the lyrics here. Feels like I've been here before. Feels like I've been here before. Feels like I've been here. But I guess that's what the feeling of Deja Vu actually is. Because I get deja vu when I hear that chorus. It's like, yeah, I feel like I've been here before. And Alexander the Great to me is just a transparent attempt at recreating the magic of Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So, the previous album, they had this really bold statement at the end of the album. They put this really long song, based on a Coleridge poem. So it sort of has a literary / historical quality to it, but there's not a dull moment in it. It's riveting to listen to. Alexander the Great sounds like they thought they could make lightning strike twice, and it just doesn't work. It's boring. The lyrics are clumsy. The last lines of the song are, and I quote, Alexander the Great, his name struck fear into the hearts of men. Alexander the Great, he died of fever in Babylon. Well, let's not put too fine a point on it there, Steve. Does sound like a history book, sort of. A little dull, not very poetic. So for me, the great stuff on this album is the songs that were written by Adrian Smith. So Wasted Years is absolutely, to me, just a resounding success. It's got just enough anthemic pop appeal to it, but it's married to this killer guitar riff. It's got a sort of, driving minor key verse, and then the chorus kind of explodes into more of a major key territory, which is something Iron Maiden has always done really well with Run to the Hills and things like that. I think Sea of Madness is a great track. And what's the other one that he wrote on this album? Sea of Madness, Stranger in a Strange Land. Those are my favorites. And I think that one of the reasons, let me just show you something here. So typically the way Steve Harris writes is in E minor. So he's always very squarely in the E minor, natural minor scale. So that usually puts Bruce Dickinson in this range. So he's always going, stranger in a strange land, or he's going, caught somewhere in time, or he's going, hallowed be thy name. So he's always in there. And the guitar chords are always these power chords that are cycling around between E and C and D and occasionally a B or an A or something, but it's very down the middle. So what Adrian does So he's got this guitar riff, like, you know, that kind of like killer, like Ace of Spades type riff. You know. Then he does this. Okay, now that chord right there is really important. That's a D major over E. That's a really sophisticated chord. That has never been used. It had never been used in an Iron Maiden song before this. Typically, they would just go to a power chord. And that would leave Bruce to kind of sing in his normal shoebox, right? But because he's got this more harmonically rich backdrop, he paints this melody over here. Pardon me, I'm getting over a cold. But that is like a melody that Donald Fagen might have written. It's a really unusual melody for an Iron Maiden song. And it's those little moments of freshness that I'm looking for in a band that puts out a lot of albums. I don't want to just hear the same familiar terrain being tread. I just need a little bit of something new. So I really appreciate the Adrian Smith songs on this album. His guitar playing, his lead playing on this album is at its absolute peak. I don't think he ever played tastier solos than on Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land. I mean, it's just magic. His touch and his vibrato and his phrasing are just, and his chops are just at an all-time high. The production is disappointing on this album. Right before this chat, I actually A-B'd some random songs from this album and songs from Power Slave, the predecessor. There's no comparison whatsoever. I mean, Power Slave is a classic Martin Birch sound. The drums are really punching in your face. There's a little bit of room ambience, but they're clear. The guitars are in your face. They're almost dry. It's that crunchy Marshall, no nonsense sound. On Somewhere in Time, everything is reverbed out. The guitar synths are fine. I don't have any problem with introducing a new instrument to expand the palette. It's the main guitar sounds that I can't handle. They obviously changed up their equipment. They started using Gallion-Kruger amplifiers. So this is just to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. Gallion-Kruger amps are purely an artifact of the 80s. They sound like a glorified Tom Scholz Rockman. For those of you who don't know, the Rockman is a little battery-powered headphone amp that came out in the 80s that it's probably the most cliched guitar sound of the 80s. It's everywhere. It's this kind of nasal, mid-rangey sound that cuts through a mix, but it's really quite lame and generic when you look back and you sort of reappraise a lot of these albums that came out in the 80s. Iron Maiden always had great sort of no-nonsense guitar sounds. And on this record, it's kind of watery and swimmy and washed out, and the drums are a little washed out as well. Everything is just a little reverb happy. So the album doesn't have just the pure punch that Peace of Mind has or Power Slave. So let's see what else. I love the Bouncy Castle comment. I love that they have these sort of like futuristic land speeders on the album that they're posing next to. Yeah, I think overall, like I don't skip any songs on this album. I enjoy it. I don't think anything is bad particularly. I start getting weary of the tropes of the Steve Harris songwriting style. And the moments that really shine for me are when Adrian is doing the writing. And, I think the whole band sounds great. I think Bruce is in fine form. His voice is absolutely undiminished. Everybody else is playing their asses off. Nobody's phoning anything in. It's just that I think they're really trying to, breathe life into some material that's a little bit lackluster. And but so for me, it's sort of this bittersweet album where I think it's the last. They're expunging the last of the just effortless magic that they seem to have for a few years, and those moments are really great. So I'm going to give it like a 6 out of 10. A 10 out of 10 Iron Maiden album for me would be Power Slave. That's to me where they reach the height of their ambitions and their execution, and there's not a dull moment, and every chorus is spectacular, and the playing is great, and everything is gelling together. This album to me sounds like a band that's just getting a little tired, and they were tired. They had been touring their asses off. So I forgive them for that. I appreciate the bravery of doing something a little bit different with the guitar synths. And I wish they had done a few more things new and different instead of kind of reusing a lot of the same old devices from their first 5 albums. Is this their 6th album?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10.
Wow. That was fantastic. Thank you for that audio analysis of the songwriting, everything. That was great. Thank you, Andee. Is there any place you can find
pleasure. Andee Blacksugar, Andee. Blacksugar. Just I'm on Instagram and all that crap.
Thank you very much. I'm going to throw it over to John, the Music Nut. Take it away. Tell us what you thought about Somewhere in Time and what you rank it out of 10, and if we can find you anywhere.
Hey, thanks, Marco. Thank you all for having me here. I echo a little bit of the sentiments of the rest of the panelists here. I mean, they all had very good points, and they were points that I was going to talk about. But I'm fresh off a show on Ryan's Final Destination where we were going to pick our Iron Maiden greatest hits album. We all took 3 songs off, 3 of songs that we thought should be on the collection. So I'm already in the Iron Maiden mode right now. So I'm going to repeat a few things that I said on that channel, or on that show rather. For me, Iron Maiden was the most consistent heavy metal or hard rock band from 1980 through 1989. I don't think there's one band that started in 80 through 89 that everything they did was very good to great. There were a lot of these legacy bands like, one Saxon, I mean, they're not really a legacy band, but they are a big band of the new wave of British heavy metal. They started out on fire in the 80s, and as the 80s went on, they slipped a little bit. Priest had their highs and their lows. Iron Maiden was pretty consistent all the way through. Everything was very good to great. Somewhere in Time, I think, is very good. And to echo Andee's sentiments, I think it starts to run out of gas at the end with Deja Vu and Alexander the Great. But everything before that I thought was very good. I caught Somewhere in Time was an excellent opener. Wasted Years, best chorus they ever wrote. That was a big video hit on MTV as well. The guitar line acted as a hook. I mean, it was very good. I think it's one of their best songs, period. Sea of Madness, I'm really high on that one as well. I like When It Comes Down, when it's really mellow, and then Bruce sings, and then it just builds back on momentum again. Heaven Can Wait, I really like. Heaven Can Wait starts out with a synth bass, and it's kind of mellow, and then it goes into the main theme. I like the soccer chants on the song. I think they work very well. Loneliness, The Long Distance Runner, that's another one that's like a slow burn before it goes into its main galloping theme. That's what Iron Maiden was best known for. I think that works very well. I love Stranger in a Strange Land. That was the second video single off the album. And we were talking about the guitar synths, just like the rest of us. I think they used the guitar synths here very well. 6 months earlier, March 86, Judas Priest put out Turbo, and what happened with when they were using guitar synths, they were just too overpowering that it took away from their sound. Here, Iron Maiden made it a part of their sound. They added it for color. So even on a song like Heaven Can Wait during the choruses, or Stranger in a Strange Land, I mean, you can hear the guitar synths, but it doesn't really grab your attention. You're still listening to the song. It's not over dominating. It's just part of the whole theme. So Stranger Strangeland, I really love. Deja Vu, yeah, it's good. But the chorus, as Andee had indicated, it's lazy. But it's a good song. Same thing with Alexander the Great. I was also thinking, yeah, they're trying to write another big epic because to end the album just like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner did on Power Slave. And Power Slave is also my favorite Iron Maiden album. But most of this is very good to great. I don't think it gets the love that it should because of what was around it. Because I mean, you had Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Live After Death, one of the great heavy metal double live albums, and then you had Seventh Son right after, and all of them had more critical acclaim. But what was on here was very good to great. I mean, like I said, I love Wasted Years, Strangers, Strangeland, Sea of Madness, excellent tracks. So I would give this, man, I'm going to follow Bill here. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I am on the Contrarians pretty often. I'm also on Ryan's Vinyl Destination. We're going to be doing a U2 series. We're going to be starting that next Wednesday. We're going to be doing a live stream on that. I'm also on Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I'll soon be going on, let me see if Rock Daydream Nation, which is Peter Kerr's channel, next week. And we're going to be, he and I don't know if he's going to bring anyone else to the party, but we're going to be doing a show about the Velvet Underground. So I'm really looking forward to all the things that I have lined up, and it's great to be here.
That's great. Thank you very much, John. We, on average, have given this album an 8 out of 10, an 8.0 out of 10, solid 8. So that's everybody's score combined. Since we're a small group and we've got a little bit of time, I figured maybe we can do just a little bit of trivia. Can anybody tell me what the B-side of the single to Wasted Years was?
Reach Out?
The B-side of the single.
It's not the Reach Out where Adina Smith sings?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Anybody know the B-side? Well, that's actually one. There's 2 B-sides apparently for this one. Anybody know the other one?
I don't know their B-sides.
Sheriff of Huddersfield.
Ooh. Yeah. And I think it's a song that it's making fun of Rod Smallwood, no?
Oh, I don't know about
I think
that.
it's a comic song.
Both of those B-sides and the B-sides to Stranger in a Strange Land, That Girl and Juanita, both appeared on the bonus disc of the reissue when they reissued Somewhere in Time with bonus songs. So all 4 of those tracks were on the reissue. But yeah, other than that, I just thought I'd ask that because B-sides are always, I have a fascination with B-sides to singles. But anyways, any final thoughts from anybody before we wrap it up?
I wanted to mention, because Turbo got mentioned earlier, that I think that, that was a good point, because similar situation with the guitar synths, but they were so featured on that album. But also the main problem with Turbo is not anything to do with the instrumentation. It's the songs, right? So it's like,
that's true. What
rubs everybody the wrong way is this weird kind of pandering, like regressive songwriting style that they took on for that record. If they had put guitar synths on Screaming for Vengeance, nobody would have cared.
Good point.
Bill, I saw you throw your hand up there for a sec.
Yeah, actually, regarding Turbo, that's another one of those, same time period. My favorite Priest is Sad Wings of Destiny. I love the 70s material the most, but I have an intense soft spot for the Turbo album. I watched the Turbo episode not long ago that you guys did, and I love Turbo just for what it is. I don't look at it as a Priest trying to be what they used to be. I look at them as fully embracing catchy commercial pop, and the up and down song quality, it's obviously there, but I think the ones that work really well for what it is. So I absolutely, it was a great point about the differences between the use of synth on that album versus Somewhere in Time. Very night and day. Initially, though, I wanted to comment on Andee in particular. Andee had a lot of points that I, as a non-musician, would not have picked up on. Obviously, I said that my particular view of Somewhere in Time is very emotionally colored because of when I jumped on and much nostalgia. So he's given me a lot of things in particular to listen for now with a more critical ear. It was interesting to hear a musician approach that. So cool.
Cool.
And I enjoyed listening to everybody. Some good points all around.
Likewise.
Another interesting point that was brought up, Ralph Chapman, who was on our Robert Plant episode that just went up, he actually said something very interesting and I had never heard before, but he said somebody told him when you listen to music to really get the full experience of a song is try to point out all the instrumentation in the song and listen to the song as many times as there are instruments and try to just focus on that instrument every time you listen to that song. So like if there's drums and there's bass and there's guitar and there's flute, whatever, every time you listen to the song, try to pick up that particular instrument that you're looking for. And he said that your appreciation for the songs will like completely change. And I had never heard that before. And that was something really cool. And I've been thinking about that now when I'm listening to music, as I'm listening, trying to catch like an instrument and just see what's happening with that thing. But anyway, any other final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, a final comment on the amazing album cover. That with so many, hidden, jokes and the Eddie, this futuristic, with his gun. Yeah, exactly. The vinyl is amazing. You can see the album cover. And I really prefer this kind of album covers from Iron Maiden compared to Book of Soldiers and Juice, where you have just the end of Eddie, different format. I think this is more fun. This is more, I don't know, more Iron Maiden.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's half the fun of getting the vinyl. I see things I never saw with my crappy old cassette way back when.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love the artwork. Overall, I think the album cover artwork is fantastic, and I love the Blade Runner version of Eddie. I just thought the band shot where they're posing next to these like futuristic scooters or whatever was
very 80s and very Sammy Hagar too. It reminds me of Sammy Hagar, because he was always doing stuff. He was like posing on the hood of Corvettes and stuff. That's when I picture, the Red Rocker from like before he was in Van Halen. I picture stuff like that. But yeah, cool. Thanks everybody for coming out today. Like and subscribe our channel if you want to see us grow, and you can support us in many different ways. Links are in the description, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks everyone. That was fun.